My sister Jessica practically spit out her wine when I told the family I'd been laid off from Sterling Financial Group. She laughed so hard that tears streamed down her perfectly contoured cheeks, and between gasps, she managed to say, "I told you that startup mentality would never work in corporate America, Amanda." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What she didn't know was that in less than 18 hours, she'd be sitting in a conference room at Pinnacle Solutions Inc., watching her new director of operations introduce me as the founder and CEO of the consulting firm they'd just signed a 7-figure contract with. The fluorescent lights of Sterling Financial Group's 20th floor had always made everything look slightly sickly, but on that Tuesday morning in March, they seemed particularly harsh as I cleaned out my desk. The cardboard box in my hands felt heavier than it should have, weighted down not just with personal items, but with the crushing realization that 3 years of dedication meant nothing when budget cuts came calling. James Mitchell, my former supervisor, hovered nearby with the uncomfortable expression of someone who knew they were delivering bad news but had run out of ways to soften it. "Amanda, I want you to know this wasn't performance-related," he said for what felt like the 10th time that morning. "The client retention numbers you pulled in were exceptional. This is purely financial restructuring from corporate." I nodded, continuing to pack my small succulent plant and the motivational desk calendar that now felt mockingly optimistic. "I understand, James. These things happen." But understanding and accepting were two entirely different creatures, and while I grasped the business logic, the sting of rejection burned just as fiercely. The elevator ride down felt eternal. Each floor that passed reminded me of meetings I'd attended, presentations I'd given, relationships I'd built with colleagues who now offered sympathetic smiles and promises to keep in touch that we both knew were well-intentioned lies. By the time I reached the parking garage, the weight of uncertainty had settled firmly on my shoulders. My phone buzzed as I loaded the box into my Honda Civic. A text from Jessica. "Mom told me about your job situation. Family dinner tonight? I have some exciting news to share." The casual dismissal in calling it my job situation rather than acknowledging it as a significant career setback was so typical of my younger sister that I almost smiled despite everything. Jessica had always possessed an impressive talent for making other people's challenges seem smaller, while simultaneously inflating her own achievements. 2 years younger but infinitely more confident in social situations, she'd carved out a successful niche in account management at various Phoenix marketing agencies. Her ability to charm clients was undeniable, even if her tendency to take credit for collaborative efforts had caused friction with more than one team. The drive to my apartment in downtown Phoenix gave me time to process what had just happened. 3 years at Sterling Financial had been both rewarding and frustrating. Rewarding, because I'd consistently exceeded targets and built genuine relationships with clients who trusted my strategic insights. Frustrating because the corporate hierarchy seemed designed to limit how much impact someone at my level could actually have. I'd started noticing patterns during my second year there. Clients would request my involvement in their accounts specifically, but when contract renewals came up, senior partners would take the lead, relegating me to background support despite having done the foundational work. My suggestions for process improvements were acknowledged but rarely implemented, usually because they threatened established workflows that senior staff preferred to maintain. The apartment I'd been renting for the past year was a modest one-bedroom in a converted warehouse district that had been steadily gentrifying. Large windows provided excellent natural light for the small home office I'd set up in the corner of the living room. That space had become my sanctuary over the past several months, the place where I'd been quietly developing something that my former colleagues, and especially my sister, knew nothing about. For the past 8 months, I'd been building a consulting practice focused on client acquisition and retention strategies for mid-sized businesses. What had started as freelance work helping a friend's struggling restaurant had evolved into something more substantial. Word of mouth had brought me 3 additional clients, then 5, then 8. The work was challenging and fulfilling in ways that my corporate position had never been. The irony wasn't lost on me that losing my job at Sterling Financial might actually accelerate the transition I'd been contemplating for months. The severance package, while modest, would provide enough cushion to focus entirely on building my consulting firm instead of trying to balance it with a demanding full-time position. My laptop opened to a folder labeled Torres Consulting Strategies, containing detailed business plans, client testimonials, and financial projections that would have impressed even the most skeptical investor. The revenue growth over the past quarter had been remarkable, driven primarily by results that spoke for themselves. One restaurant client had increased their customer retention by 43%, using my recommended loyalty program restructuring. A local real estate firm had boosted their conversion rates by 37% after implementing my lead nurturing system. The work energized me in ways that corporate assignments never had. Instead of managing someone else's vision within predetermined parameters, I was creating solutions tailored specifically to each client's unique challenges and opportunities. The direct relationship with business owners who implemented my recommendations and saw immediate results provided validation that my instincts about market dynamics were not only accurate, but valuable. My phone rang, interrupting my review of recent client feedback. Marcus Chen, a former colleague who'd left Sterling Financial 6 months earlier to join a rapidly growing company called Pinnacle Solutions Inc., appeared on the caller ID. "Amanda, I heard about what happened at Sterling," he said without preamble. "That's their loss, honestly. I've been meaning to call you anyway because something interesting has come up at Pinnacle." Marcus had always been direct, a quality that had made him one of the few people at Sterling whose opinions I genuinely valued. His departure had been a significant loss for the company, though they'd never acknowledged it publicly. "I'm listening," I replied, curious about what had prompted his call. "We're expanding our client services division, and we need someone to lead strategic partnerships with external consultants. The role would involve identifying specialists who can provide expertise we don't have in-house, then managing those relationships to deliver comprehensive solutions for our bigger clients." The opportunity sounded intriguing, but I'd learned to be cautious about positions that seemed too good to be true. "What kind of external expertise are you looking for?" "Client acquisition and retention strategies primarily. We're great at the technical implementation, but we need someone who understands the psychology of customer relationships. Someone who can develop systems that don't just attract clients, but keep them engaged long-term." My pulse quickened as Marcus described exactly the type of work I'd been doing independently. The conversation continued for 20 minutes, during which he outlined Pinnacle's rapid growth, their ambitious expansion plans, and their need for specialized consulting partnerships to support clients whose needs exceeded their current capabilities. "Would you be interested in meeting with our Director of Operations tomorrow?" Marcus asked as our conversation wound down. "Her name is Patricia Williams, and she's been frustrated by the limited options for quality consulting partnerships in the Phoenix market." I agreed to the meeting, though I was careful not to reveal the extent of my existing consulting work. Something told me that the conversation might develop in directions neither Marcus nor I was fully anticipating. That evening, I drove to my parents' house in Scottsdale for the family dinner Jessica had mentioned. The Torres family home was a modest ranch-style house in an established neighborhood where my parents had lived for over 20 years. The familiar scent of my mother's cooking and the sound of the television in the living room provided comfort that I hadn't realized I needed. Jessica arrived fashionably late, as always, her silver BMW pulling into the driveway just as we were sitting down to eat. She entered with characteristic energy, kissing our parents and launching immediately into an animated description of her day, before acknowledging my presence with a brief, "How are you holding up, Amanda?" "I'm doing fine, actually," I replied, helping my mother serve dinner. Sometimes these transitions create opportunities you wouldn't have considered otherwise. Jessica raised an eyebrow, her expression suggesting polite skepticism. That's a very positive way to look at unemployment. Are you already interviewing somewhere? The casual dismissal in her tone sparked familiar irritation, but I maintained my composure. I have some possibilities developing. What was the exciting news you wanted to share? Her face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. I got the promotion I've been working toward at Henderson & Associates, senior account manager with a significantly better compensation package and my own team to manage. But the really exciting part is that they're expanding into strategic consulting partnerships, which means I'll be working with some major clients on more sophisticated projects. Our parents offered appropriate congratulations, clearly pleased by Jessica's advancement. She continued describing her new responsibilities with obvious pride, and I found myself genuinely happy for her success despite the timing. The best part, Jessica continued, is that Henderson just signed a partnership agreement with this growing company called Pinnacle Solutions. We're going to be working together on client projects that require both marketing expertise and operational consulting. It's exactly the kind of high-level work I've been wanting to get into. My water glass paused halfway to my lips. Pinnacle Solutions? Yes, do you know them? They're relatively new but growing incredibly fast. Henderson's leadership is really excited about the partnership potential. I managed a neutral expression. The name sounds familiar. They're local, right? Downtown Phoenix. Their office is in one of those converted warehouse buildings near Central Avenue. Very trendy, very modern. I'm supposed to meet with their director of operations tomorrow to start planning our first collaborative project. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The conversation moved on to other topics, but my mind was racing with the implications of what Jessica had just shared. The meeting Marcus had arranged for me tomorrow was likely with the same director of operations who would be meeting with Jessica to discuss Henderson & Associates' partnership with Pinnacle Solutions. After dinner, as I helped clear the table, Jessica approached with what appeared to be genuine concern. Amanda, I hope you know I wasn't making light of your situation earlier. Job transitions are always stressful. If you need any connections or recommendations, I'm happy to help. The offer seemed sincere, which made my response more complicated than simple irritation would have allowed. I appreciate that, Jessica. I think I'm going to be fine, though. Sometimes losing one opportunity creates space for something better. She studied my face with the analytical expression she used when trying to read client reactions. You seem remarkably calm for someone who just lost their job. Do you have something lined up already? Not exactly, I replied carefully. But I have some projects developing that might turn into something more substantial. Jessica nodded, her expression suggesting she interpreted projects as the kind of freelance work that unemployed people took to pay bills while searching for real employment. Well, let me know if you want me to ask around about openings. The market is pretty competitive right now, but I have good relationships with several agencies. Driving home that evening, I reflected on the strange coincidence that was developing around Pinnacle Solutions. Jessica's excitement about her new partnership opportunity was genuine, and I found myself hoping that whatever happened in tomorrow's meeting wouldn't complicate her advancement. Despite our differences and her occasional condescension, I wanted her to succeed. At the same time, I couldn't ignore the potential that Marcus had described. If Pinnacle Solutions was genuinely looking for consulting partnerships in my area of expertise, and if their growth trajectory was as impressive as he'd suggested, this could be the catalyst I needed to transition fully into independent consulting. My home office felt different that evening as I prepared for the next day's meeting. The business plans and client testimonials that I'd been developing in relative isolation suddenly seemed like they might have immediate relevance. The work I'd been doing quietly, without fanfare or family awareness, was about to be tested in a professional context that could determine my career direction. The irony struck me as I reviewed my presentation materials one final time. Jessica's laughter at dinner, her casual dismissal of my job situation, her offer to help me find real employment through her connections. She had no idea that within hours we might find ourselves in the same building, preparing for meetings that would intersect in ways neither of us could have anticipated. Sometimes the most significant changes in our lives develop quietly, beneath the surface of our daily routines, until circumstances align to bring them into the light. As I prepared for sleep that night, I had the distinct feeling that tomorrow would be one of those alignment moments, when hidden preparation meets unexpected opportunity in ways that change everything that follows. The morning sun streaming through my apartment windows carried a different quality than usual, sharper somehow, as if the light itself sensed the significance of what lay ahead. I'd been awake since 5:30, not from anxiety, but from the peculiar alertness that comes when you know something important is about to unfold. My coffee tasted richer, my shower felt more refreshing, and even my reflection in the bathroom mirror seemed to hold more confidence than it had in months. Patricia Williams had scheduled our meeting for 10 o'clock at Pinnacle Solutions headquarters on Central Avenue. The building itself was exactly as Jessica had described, a converted warehouse in the heart of Phoenix's revitalized downtown district. Red brick exterior with industrial-sized windows that had been retrofitted with modern glass, creating an interesting blend of historical character and contemporary functionality. I arrived 15 minutes early, using the extra time to observe the energy of the place. Employees moved with purpose through the lobby, their conversations peppered with technical terms and project deadlines that suggested genuine engagement with their work. The reception area featured exposed brick walls decorated with awards and client testimonials, creating an atmosphere that balanced professionalism with approachability. Marcus appeared at 9:55, his familiar smile, carrying warmth that helped ease any lingering nervousness. "Amanda, perfect timing. Patricia is looking forward to meeting you. She's been researching client acquisition specialists for weeks without finding anyone who really impressed her." We took the elevator to the 4th floor, passing open-concept work areas where teams collaborated around whiteboards covered in flowcharts and strategic diagrams. The atmosphere felt dynamic, almost electric, completely different from Sterling Financial's more traditional corporate environment. Patricia Williams's office occupied a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of downtown, Phoenix, and the distant mountains. She was younger than I'd expected, probably early 40s, with prematurely gray hair that she wore in a sophisticated bob and sharp brown eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. "Amanda Torres," she said, rising from behind a desk covered with project folders and architectural drawings. "Marcus has told me impressive things about your work in client relationship management. I understand you've been developing some innovative approaches to customer retention." Her handshake was firm, her attention completely focused, despite the obvious demands competing for her time. "Thank you for making time to meet with me, Patricia. Marcus mentioned that Pinnacle is expanding into strategic consulting partnerships." "That's correct. We've grown from 12 employees to over 60 in the past 18 months, primarily through referrals from satisfied clients. The challenge we're facing now is that our clients' needs are becoming more sophisticated than our current service offerings can address." She gestured for me to take a seat in one of the leather chairs facing her desk. "We excel at operational implementation, process optimization, technology integration, but increasingly, clients are asking for help with customer acquisition and retention strategies that go beyond our expertise." This was exactly the opening I'd been hoping for. "What specific challenges are they presenting?" Patricia leaned back in her chair, her expression shifting from polite professionalism to genuine engagement. "Last month, one of our largest clients, a regional restaurant chain, asked us to help them understand why their customer retention rates were declining, despite increased marketing spend. We could analyze their operational efficiency and suggest process improvements, but we couldn't address the underlying relationship dynamics that were driving customers away. Did you refer them to external consultants? We tried. The consultants we found either lacked practical experience or wanted to implement generic solutions without understanding the client's specific operational context. What we really needed was someone who could bridge that gap, someone who understands both the relationship psychology and the operational realities. My pulse quickened as Patricia described precisely the type of integrated approach I'd been developing with my own clients. That's an interesting challenge. How do you typically handle situations where client needs exceed your current capabilities? Honestly, we've been turning down projects, which feels like missed opportunities for both us and the clients. That's why I'm exploring partnerships with specialists who can complement our strengths rather than compete with them. For the next 20 minutes, Patricia outlined specific examples of client requests they'd been unable to fulfill. A medical practice struggling with patient retention despite excellent clinical outcomes. A professional services firm losing clients to competitors despite superior technical expertise. A retail chain with declining repeat customer rates despite competitive pricing and product quality. Each example resonated with challenges I'd successfully addressed for my own consulting clients. The restaurant that had increased retention by 43% had faced similar issues to the chain Patricia described. The real estate firm's conversion rate improvements directly paralleled the professional services challenges she outlined. What would an ideal partnership look like from Pinnacle's perspective? I asked, careful to frame the question in terms of their needs rather than my capabilities. Patricia's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Someone who could work collaboratively with our teams, not just provide recommendations, but help implement solutions that integrate with our operational improvements. Ideally, someone local who could be available for client meetings and project development sessions. She paused, studying my expression. Marcus mentioned that you have experience in client relationship management, but I'm curious about your background in strategic consulting specifically. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. The transition from discussing Pinnacle's needs to revealing how my experience aligned with their requirements. I've been developing expertise in that area through independent projects over the past several months. Would you like to see some specific examples of results I've achieved? Absolutely. I opened my portfolio, revealing detailed case studies from my consulting work. Patricia's attention sharpened as I walked through the restaurant client's retention improvement, the real estate firm's conversion rate optimization, and the small business loyalty program restructuring that had generated measurable revenue increases. These results are impressive, she said, examining the data more closely. The methodology you used with the restaurant client could definitely be adapted for the chain I mentioned. The loyalty program restructuring addresses exactly the kind of customer relationship challenges we've been seeing. Her enthusiasm was building as she connected my examples to Pinnacle's client needs. How many clients are you currently working with independently? 8 active clients, with 3 more in the proposal stage. The work has been growing organically through referrals, but I've been considering whether to formalize it into a more structured consulting practice. Patricia leaned forward, her expression shifting to something resembling excitement. What if I told you that Pinnacle has been discussing the possibility of acquiring a client acquisition specialist to lead our strategic partnerships division? Not just a consulting arrangement, but actually bringing someone in-house to build this capability. The opportunity was larger than anything I'd anticipated. That's an intriguing possibility. What would that look like structurally? You would maintain your existing clients while developing strategic partnerships between Pinnacle and other specialists in complementary areas. Essentially, you'd be building a network of experts who could collaborate on comprehensive client solutions. She pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. I'm authorized to make an offer for the right candidate. The position would be Director of Strategic Partnerships, reporting directly to me, with significant autonomy to develop the division according to your vision. My mind raced through the implications. This wasn't just a job offer. It was an opportunity to build something substantial, to create the kind of integrated consulting approach I'd been developing independently, but with the resources and client base of a rapidly growing company. The compensation package would include base salary plus performance bonuses tied to partnership revenue generation, Patricia continued. Additionally, you'd have equity participation in Pinnacle's growth, which given our current trajectory could be quite significant. She named a base salary figure that was 30% higher than what I'd been earning at Sterling Financial, before considering the bonus and equity components. We'd also provide full support for transitioning your existing clients into the partnership framework so you wouldn't lose the relationships you've built. The offer exceeded my expectations in every dimension, but something held me back from immediate acceptance. This sounds like an exceptional opportunity, Patricia. I'd like to review the details carefully before responding. Would that be acceptable? Of course. Take whatever time you need. I do hope you'll consider it seriously. Based on what you've shown me today, I think this could be transformative for both you and Pinnacle. As our meeting concluded, Patricia walked me toward the elevator, continuing to describe the company's culture and growth plans. We have another meeting starting in a few minutes with Henderson and Associates about a marketing partnership. They're bringing their new senior account manager to discuss collaborative project possibilities. My pulse quickened, but I maintained neutral interest. Henderson and Associates has a good reputation in the local market. Yes, we're excited about the partnership potential. Their account manager is supposed to be quite talented, someone named Jessica Torres. The elevator arrived just as Patricia finished speaking. Well, congratulations on what sounds like an exciting partnership, I managed, stepping into the elevator with what I hoped appeared to be casual politeness. As the doors closed, I felt the strange sensation of standing at the center of converging storylines. In less than an hour, Jessica would be sitting in Patricia's office, discussing partnership opportunities with the same company that had just offered me a director-level position. The same company where she would potentially be working on projects that I might be leading. The drive back to my apartment provided time to process what had just occurred. The Director of Strategic Partnerships position wasn't just a job, it was an opportunity to build something significant, to create value in ways that my corporate role at Sterling Financial had never allowed. The compensation was substantial, the growth potential was remarkable, and the work aligned perfectly with what I'd been developing independently. More importantly, it represented validation of capabilities that had been systematically undervalued in my previous position. Patricia had recognized the strategic value of what I'd been building, had seen potential that went beyond my current client base to something that could scale significantly. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How did it go? Patricia seemed very impressed when I passed her office afterward. I replied, very well. She made an interesting offer that I'm considering carefully. That's fantastic. I had a feeling you two would connect. Patricia doesn't make offers lightly. The rest of the afternoon passed in strategic planning. If I accepted Pinnacle's offer, I would need to transition my existing clients carefully, ensuring they received uninterrupted service while adapting their relationships to the new partnership framework. The financial projections were compelling, suggesting that within 2 years, the director position could generate income well beyond what traditional corporate employment typically offered. More significantly, it would provide the platform to build something lasting, to create systems and relationships that could continue generating value for years. Instead of managing someone else's vision within predetermined boundaries, I would be architecting solutions that could adapt and evolve based on client needs and market opportunities. That evening, I called my mentor from business school, David Rodriguez, who had transitioned from corporate consulting to building his own firm 5 years earlier. His insights about the challenges and opportunities of strategic partnerships proved invaluable. The key question, David observed after I'd described the offer, is whether Pinnacle's leadership genuinely supports innovation or just talks about it. Many companies say they want entrepreneurial thinking, but then constrain it with bureaucratic processes. Patricia seemed genuinely committed to giving me autonomy to build the division according to my vision, I replied. The equity participation suggests they're thinking long-term about shared success. That's encouraging. The other consideration is timing. You've been building momentum independently. Will joining a larger organization accelerate that momentum or redirect it in ways that might limit your ultimate potential? It was a sophisticated question that required careful consideration. The independent consulting path offered complete autonomy, but limited resources and slower scaling potential. The Pinnacle opportunity provided substantial resources and immediate access to larger clients, but within an organizational framework that could potentially constrain certain decisions. Based on what you've described about their culture and Patricia's leadership style, it sounds like they're offering the best of both worlds, David concluded. Resources and support without micromanagement. Those opportunities are rare. Our conversation continued for another 30 minutes, during which David helped me think through implementation strategies for the transition, potential challenges to anticipate, and success metrics to establish. By the time we finished, I had clarity about both the opportunity and the approach I wanted to take. That night, I drafted a response to Patricia, accepting the Director of Strategic Partnerships position while outlining specific expectations about autonomy, resource allocation, and performance measurement. The tone was professional but confident, establishing the framework for a collaborative partnership rather than traditional employment. I also began planning how to communicate the transition to my family, particularly to Jessica, whose meeting with Patricia was likely happening at that moment. The situation required delicate handling, balancing professional discretion with family relationships that would inevitably be affected by this development. The irony wasn't lost on me that 24 hours earlier, Jessica had been offering to help me find employment through her professional connections. Now, I was about to accept a director-level position at a company where she would potentially be collaborating on projects under my strategic leadership. The evening concluded with a sense of anticipation different from anything I'd experienced during my corporate career. Instead of anxiety about fitting into predetermined roles or meeting other people's expectations, I felt excitement about building something new, about taking capabilities I'd developed independently and scaling them in ways that could create value for multiple stakeholders. Sometimes the most significant opportunities emerge from apparent setbacks, revealing possibilities that wouldn't have been visible without the disruption that forces us to look beyond familiar boundaries. Losing my position at Sterling Financial had initially felt like failure, but it was becoming clear that it might have been the catalyst for something far more substantial than what I'd lost. As I prepared for sleep, my phone buzzed with one final message, a text from Jessica. Had an amazing meeting at Pinnacle Solutions today. This partnership is going to be incredible. Can't wait to tell you about it at dinner this weekend. Smiled, setting the phone aside without responding immediately. By this weekend, our family dinner conversation would likely be very different from what either of us was currently anticipating. Friday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that sometimes accompanies moments of decisive change. I had spent Thursday evening finalizing my acceptance letter to Patricia Williams, outlining my vision for the Strategic Partnerships Division, and confirming my start date for the following Monday. The transition felt both sudden and inevitable, as if months of preparation had been building toward this precise convergence of opportunity and readiness. My phone had been unusually quiet since sending the acceptance email, which suggested that Patricia and her team were likely processing the implications of bringing someone with my background into their organizational structure. The silence didn't concern me. Major decisions in growing companies often required internal coordination before external communication resumed. What did capture my attention was a text from my mother around 8 in the morning. Jessica called last night, very excited about some big project at her new job. She wants to have a celebration dinner on Sunday to share her news with the family. Can you make it? I confirmed my attendance while mentally preparing for what promised to be an interesting family gathering. Jessica's enthusiasm about her Pinnacle Solutions partnership meeting had clearly energized her, and I found myself curious about her perspective on the collaboration opportunities she'd discussed with Patricia. Her excitement was genuine, which made the approaching revelation more complex than simple satisfaction at proving her wrong. The weekend provided necessary space to organize my transition strategy. My existing consulting clients needed careful communication about the partnership structure that would maintain their relationships while integrating them into Pinnacle's broader service framework. Each client represented trust that had been built through consistent results, and preserving that trust during the transition required thoughtful planning. Saturday afternoon, I met with Linda Foster, a former colleague from Sterling Financial who had become a close friend and whose judgment I valued for its combination of business acumen and personal insight. We chose a quiet cafe in Tempe, away from the downtown Phoenix professional circuit, where conversations might be overheard by people with connections to either Pinnacle Solutions or Henderson and Associates. "So let me understand this correctly," Linda said after I'd outlined the week's developments. "You lost your job on Tuesday, got offered a director position on Wednesday, and your sister is about to start working on projects that you'll potentially be overseeing?" "That's an accurate summary of the situation," I confirmed, appreciating Linda's ability to distill complex circumstances into their essential elements. Linda stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "And Jessica has no idea about any of this? None whatsoever. She knows I was laid off from Sterling, and she knows I've been doing some freelance work, but she has no understanding of the scope or success of what I've been building independently." "This is going to be quite a shock for her," Linda observed. "Jessica's always seen herself as the more successful sister professionally. Finding out that you've been operating at a level she didn't even know existed will challenge some fundamental assumptions." Linda's insight touched on dynamics I'd been avoiding examining too closely. Jessica's condescension about my career had always been rooted in her perception that she understood professional success better than I did. Her offers to help me find employment through her connections reflected genuine care, but also an assumption about our relative positions in the professional hierarchy. "How do you want to handle the family dinner?" Linda asked. "Are you planning to reveal everything at once or take a more gradual approach?" The question highlighted a decision I'd been postponing. The family dinner would likely focus on Jessica's excitement about her new partnership opportunities, providing a natural opening for me to share my own professional developments. But the timing and approach would significantly influence how the information was received and processed. "I think I'll let Jessica share her news first," I decided. Her enthusiasm is genuine, and I don't want to overshadow what is legitimately an important advancement for her. Depending on how the conversation develops, I might share some of my own updates. Linda nodded approvingly. "That's generous, especially considering how she reacted to your layoff earlier this week." Sunday evening arrived with the golden light that makes Phoenix particularly beautiful during certain times of year. My parents' house was filled with the familiar aromas of my mother's cooking and the comfortable sounds of family gathering. Jessica arrived precisely on time, unusual for her, suggesting that her excitement about sharing news had overcome her typical casual approach to scheduling. She looked radiant, her success evident in everything from her posture to her choice of outfit. The confidence that had always been her strongest professional asset was amplified by whatever had happened during her week of meetings and planning sessions. "Before we eat," Jessica announced as we gathered around the dining room table, "I want to share what's been happening with my new position at Henderson and Associates. This week has been absolutely incredible." Our parents settled into their chairs with the pleased attention that comes from seeing their children succeed. I took my seat across from Jessica, genuinely curious about her perspective on the developments that had intersected with my own professional transition. "The promotion I mentioned earlier this week was just the beginning," Jessica continued, her enthusiasm infectious. "Henderson and Associates has been selected as the marketing partner for this amazing company called Pinnacle Solutions. They're one of the fastest-growing firms in Phoenix, and the partnership is going to create opportunities I never imagined possible." She paused to take a sip of water, building anticipation in her characteristic style. "I spent Wednesday in meetings with their Director of Operations, Patricia Williams, and I have to say, she's one of the most impressive executives I've ever encountered. Brilliant strategic thinking, clear vision for growth, and she really understood the value that Henderson could bring to their client relationships." My mother asked appropriate questions about the partnership structure and Jessica's role, while my father inquired about the financial implications for her career trajectory. I listened with growing appreciation for Jessica's genuine excitement and her articulate description of opportunities that clearly energized her professional ambitions. "The really exciting part," Jessica continued, "is that Pinnacle is building something called a Strategic Partnerships Division. They're bringing in specialists from different areas to create comprehensive solutions for their clients." Patricia mentioned that they're hiring a director to lead this initiative, someone with experience in client acquisition and retention strategies. She leaned forward, her expression shifting to something resembling concern mixed with opportunity. "Actually, Amanda, this might be perfect timing for your situation. Patricia specifically mentioned they're looking for someone with corporate experience in customer relationship management. I could probably arrange an introduction if you're interested." The offer was made with sincere helpfulness, reflecting Jessica's genuine care despite her tendency toward condescension. She had no way of knowing that Patricia Williams and I had already spent considerable time discussing the position she was describing, or that I had accepted the role she was suggesting I might apply for. "That's very thoughtful of you to consider." "Me?" I replied carefully. "What else did Patricia tell you about the type of person they're seeking for that director position?" Jessica's face lit up as she recalled her conversation. "She said they need someone who can bridge the gap between relationship psychology and operational implementation. Someone who understands both the client acquisition process and the practical challenges of integrating strategic recommendations with existing business operations." She continued describing Patricia's vision for the Strategic Partnerships Division with impressive accuracy, demonstrating both her listening skills and her ability to synthesize complex information quickly. Her enthusiasm for the collaborative possibilities was evident and infectious. Patricia also mentioned that they've been frustrated by the quality of external consultants available in the Phoenix market, Jessica added. "Most are either too theoretical or too narrow in their expertise. They really need someone who can think strategically but also execute practically." My father asked about the timeline for the partnership development, and Jessica explained that Henderson and Associates would be starting their first collaborative project within the next few weeks. "I'm supposed to coordinate with Pinnacle's Strategic Partnerships Director once they hire someone. Patricia said the position should be filled by early next week." The conversation continued for several more minutes, with Jessica describing various aspects of Pinnacle's culture, growth trajectory, and client base. Her observations were perceptive, and her enthusiasm was genuine, making the approaching revelation more complicated than simple vindication would have been. As we moved through dinner, the discussion shifted to other family topics, but Jessica periodically returned to her excitement about the Pinnacle partnership and her repeated offers to facilitate an introduction for me. Each offer was made with increasing insistence, as if she was becoming more convinced that this opportunity was exactly what I needed to recover from my recent unemployment. "Amanda, I'm serious about talking to Patricia about you," Jessica said as we cleared the dinner dishes. "I know losing your job was discouraging, but this could be exactly the fresh start you need. Patricia seems like someone who would recognize your potential." The moment had arrived when continuing to withhold information began to feel less like strategic timing and more like deception. Jessica's genuine care and her repeated offers to help created an obligation to share what had actually been developing professionally. "Jessica, I appreciate your willingness to help more than you know," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Actually, there have been some developments this week that I haven't had a chance to share yet. Something in my tone caught her attention, and she paused in stacking plates to look at me directly. What kind of developments? I've been building a consulting practice over the past several months, working with clients on exactly the kind of customer acquisition and retention strategies you described Patricia discussing. The work has been going well enough that I've been considering transitioning to it full-time. Jessica's expression shifted from helpful concern to surprised interest. You've been doing consulting work? I thought you said you were just working on some freelance projects. The projects evolved into something more substantial than I initially expected. I've been working with 8 different clients, helping them improve their customer relationship strategies and seeing significant results. I could see Jessica processing this information, recalibrating her understanding of my professional situation. That's impressive, Amanda. I had no idea you were developing that kind of expertise. Have you been marketing these services actively? Most of the growth has come through referrals from satisfied clients. Word of mouth has been more effective than I anticipated. Jessica nodded, her expression becoming more serious as she absorbed the implications. So, when you say you're considering transitioning to full-time consulting, you mean you actually have a viable business foundation already established? That's correct. The revenue has been consistent and growing, and the client feedback has been very positive. She studied my face with the analytical expression she used when evaluating complex business situations. And you've been doing this while working at Sterling Financial? That must have required incredible time management. It has been challenging to balance both commitments, which is one reason why the layoff might actually create better opportunities than problems. Jessica sat down across from me, her helpful sister mode shifting into professional colleague mode. Tell me more about the types of results you've been achieving. Patricia was very specific about needing someone who could demonstrate measurable outcomes. For the next 20 minutes, I shared examples of my consulting work, describing the restaurant clients' retention improvements, the real estate firm's conversion rate optimization, and the loyalty program restructuring that had generated significant revenue increases. Jessica listened with growing attention, asking sophisticated questions about methodology and implementation. These results are remarkable, she said when I finished. The restaurant retention improvement alone would impress Patricia. She specifically mentioned working with a regional chain facing similar challenges. Jessica paused, her expression becoming more thoughtful. Amanda, with this kind of track record, you wouldn't need my introduction to Patricia. You could approach Pinnacle directly as an established consultant. The conversation was approaching the moment when withholding additional information would become actively misleading. Jessica's professional respect was building as she understood the scope of what I'd been accomplishing, and her suggestions about approaching Pinnacle demonstrated both her strategic thinking and her continued desire to help. Actually, Jessica, I've already had some conversations with Pinnacle Solutions this week. Her eyebrows raised with surprise and what might have been slight disappointment that I hadn't mentioned this earlier. You have? What kind of conversations? I met with Patricia Williams on Wednesday to discuss their Strategic Partnerships Division development. Jessica's expression went through several rapid changes as she processed this information. Surprise that I had already connected with Patricia, curiosity about how that connection had developed, and growing realization that my professional situation was significantly different from what she had understood. You met with Patricia on Wednesday. The same day I met with her about the Henderson partnership? Yes, though at different times. I had a meeting scheduled for 10 in the morning. Jessica stared at me for a long moment, her analytical mind clearly working through implications and connections. Amanda, what exactly did you and Patricia discuss? The question hung in the air between us, carrying weight that extended beyond simple curiosity. Jessica was beginning to recognize that there were layers to this situation that she hadn't been aware of, and her expression suggested she was preparing for information that might significantly alter her understanding of recent events. Patricia offered me the director position for the Strategic Partnerships Division, I said simply. The words seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet dining room. Jessica's face went completely still, her eyes fixed on mine as she absorbed what I had just told her. The helpful sister who had been offering to arrange introductions was realizing that the person she had been trying to assist was already several steps ahead of where she had imagined. "She offered you the director position?" Jessica's voice was carefully controlled, though I could hear multiple emotions beneath the surface. "I accepted the offer on Thursday. I start Monday morning." The silence that followed stretched long, enough for both of us to fully comprehend what this meant. Jessica would be coordinating with Henderson and Associates on partnership projects that I would be directing from Pinnacle's side. The dynamic she had established of helping her unemployed sister find work had just inverted in the most dramatic way possible. "So, when I was telling you about the partnership opportunities and suggesting I could introduce you to Patricia," Jessica said slowly, "you already knew everything I was describing because you're going to be the person I'll be working with on those projects." "That's correct." Jessica sat back in her chair, her expressions cycling through surprise, confusion, and what appeared to be dawning recognition of how completely her assumptions about our respective professional situations had been overturned. The sister she had been offering to help through professional connections was about to become her professional superior in the collaboration she was most excited about. The silence in my parents' dining room stretched beyond comfortable into something approaching surreal. Jessica remained motionless, her hands still positioned as if she were about to pick up another plate, her eyes fixed on mine with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger or hurt, but something more complex, a fundamental recalibration happening in real time as she processed information that restructured everything she thought she understood about our professional relationship. My mother, sensing the shift in atmosphere but not understanding its source, began clearing the remaining dishes with unnecessary attention to detail. My father continued reading his newspaper in the living room, oblivious to the dramatic revelation that had just unfolded at his dining room table. "You're going to be my counterpart at Pinnacle," Jessica said finally, her voice carrying a note of wonder mixed with something that might have been respect. When Patricia mentioned the Strategic Partnerships Director, she was talking about you. "That's right." Jessica shook her head slowly, as if trying to clear her thoughts. "And when I was offering to help you network and find job opportunities, you already had accepted a director-level position at one of Phoenix's fastest-growing companies." "I had just accepted it, yes." She stood up abruptly, walking to the kitchen window that overlooked my parents' backyard. The evening light was fading, casting long shadows across the familiar landscape of our childhood home. When she turned back to face me, her expression had shifted again, this time toward something approaching professional curiosity. "Amanda, I need to understand something. When did you start building this consulting practice? Because the timeline doesn't make sense to me." It was a fair question, one that required me to explain months of careful development that I had kept private from family and most friends. "I started taking on small projects about 8 months ago. Initially, it was just helping a friend's restaurant with their customer retention issues." 8 months, Jessica repeated. "So you were building this while you were still employed at Sterling Financial?" "Yes, working evenings and weekends mostly." Jessica returned to her chair, leaning forward with the focused attention she brought to complex client situations. "And you never mentioned it because—" The question touched on motivations I hadn't fully examined myself. Why had I kept the consulting work private, even from family members who would have been supportive? I wanted to see if it would develop into something substantial before talking about it. And honestly, I wasn't sure how people would react to me doing outside work while employed elsewhere. "But it did develop into something substantial," Jessica observed. "Substantial enough to impress Patricia Williams, who doesn't impress easily." Her tone had shifted from personal processing to professional analysis, which suggested she was beginning to separate the family dynamics from the business implications. This was Jessica at her best, when her analytical capabilities took precedence over emotional reactions. "How substantial?" she asked directly. "I mean, what kind of revenue were you generating independently?" I named a figure that represented my quarterly consulting income, watching Jessica's eyebrows rise as she calculated the annual implications. "That's more than most people make in full-time positions." It was growing consistently. The referral rate was strong and client retention was excellent. Jessica nodded thoughtfully. "So, when you lost your job at Sterling, you weren't actually facing unemployment. You were facing an opportunity to focus entirely on a business that was already profitable." "That's how I saw it, yes." She was quiet for several minutes, processing not just the financial implications, but the strategic thinking that had guided my decisions over the past months. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of something approaching admiration. "You planned this, didn't you? Not the layoff specifically, but the transition. You were building an exit strategy from corporate employment." The observation was perceptive and largely accurate. I was building options. The corporate environment at Sterling was becoming increasingly frustrating, and the consulting work was more fulfilling than anything I'd done in years. "And now you're going to be directing strategic partnerships for a company that's growing rapidly in exactly the market you've been serving independently." Jessica's strategic mind was clearly working through the implications. "That's not just a career transition, Amanda. That's career acceleration." My mother reappeared from the kitchen, having finished cleaning up and settled into her usual chair at the table. "You girls seem to be having an intense conversation. Everything all right?" Jessica looked at me, clearly wondering how much of our professional discussion to share with our parents. I nodded slightly, indicating that she could share whatever felt appropriate. "Mom, Amanda just told me that she's been hired as a director at Pinnacle Solutions, the company I was telling you about earlier. We're going to be working together on partnership projects." My mother's face lit up with pleasure and surprise. "Amanda, that's wonderful news. You didn't mention you were interviewing anywhere." "It developed quickly this week," I replied. The timing worked out well with the layoff from Sterling. My father appeared from the living room, having caught enough of the conversation to understand that something significant was being discussed. "What's this about a new job?" Jessica took the initiative to explain the situation to our parents, describing both companies and the partnership structure with impressive clarity. As she spoke, I observed her processing the information in real time, her enthusiasm for the collaboration opportunities returning as she separated the professional elements from the personal surprise. "So you'll be working together?" my mother asked, clearly pleased by the idea of her daughters collaborating professionally. "In a sense," Jessica replied. "Amanda will be directing the strategic partnerships from Pinnacle's side, and I'll be coordinating with her team from Henderson's perspective." My father, ever practical, asked about the timeline and logistics. "When does all this start?" "I begin at Pinnacle on Monday," I answered. Jessica's first collaborative project is scheduled to start within the next few weeks. The family conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with our parents asking questions about both companies, the partnership structure, and our respective roles. Their pleasure at seeing both daughters advancing professionally was evident, and their excitement about us working together added a positive dimension to what had been a complex revelation. As the evening wound down and we prepared to leave, Jessica approached me in the kitchen where I was helping my mother with final cleanup tasks. "Amanda, can we talk privately for a minute?" We stepped onto the back patio where the cooling, desert air provided a peaceful contrast to the intensity of the evening's conversations. Jessica leaned against the patio railing, her expression thoughtful rather than emotional. "I owe you an apology," she said without preamble. "For what?" "For underestimating you, for making assumptions about your professional capabilities, for offering to help you find work when you were already operating at a level I didn't even recognize." The apology was unexpected and generous, reflecting Jessica's capacity for self-reflection when her initial reactions had time to settle. You didn't have any way of knowing what I was building privately. Maybe not, but I should have given you more credit. I've been treating you like the younger sister who needed career guidance, when actually you've been developing expertise that I'm only beginning to understand. Jessica paused, looking out at the desert landscape beyond my parents' backyard. When you lost your job at Sterling, my first reaction was to feel sorry for you. Then when you seemed calm about it, I thought you were in denial about how challenging the job market is right now. And now? Now I realize you were calm because you already knew you had better options than anything Sterling was offering. She turned to face me directly. That's not denial, Amanda. That's strategic thinking. The conversation was moving in directions I hadn't anticipated, toward mutual respect rather than family tension or professional awkwardness. Jessica's ability to separate her initial emotional reactions from the business realities was creating space for a different kind of relationship. I'm excited about working with Pinnacle, she continued, and I'm curious to see what you build with their strategic partnerships division. Based on what Patricia told me about their client base and growth trajectory, you're going to have significant opportunities to scale what you've been doing independently. I'm looking forward to the collaboration as well, I replied. Your expertise in account management and client relationships will be valuable for the kinds of comprehensive solutions we're planning to develop. Jessica smiled, the first completely natural smile I'd seen from her since the revelation began. This is going to be interesting, isn't it? Working together professionally after all these years of family dinners and holiday gatherings. It will definitely be different. Good different, I think. Jessica's confidence was returning as she processed the new dynamic. We both bring distinct strengths to this partnership, and we already know how to communicate with each other, which should make the collaboration more efficient than working with strangers. As we prepared to leave my parents' house, Jessica made one more observation that captured the significance of what had shifted during the evening. You know, Amanda, I've always been proud of being the sister with the clear career trajectory, the one who seemed to have everything figured out professionally. You do have things figured out, I replied. Your advancement at Henderson is impressive, and your strategic thinking about partnership opportunities shows real sophistication. Thank you, but that's not my point. Jessica paused by her car, keys in hand. My point is that I realize now that you've been figuring things out too, just more quietly. While I was focused on climbing the ladder at different agencies, you were building something entirely your own. She opened her car door, then turned back with a final comment. I'm proud of you, Amanda, and I'm excited to see what you accomplish at Pinnacle. The drive back to my apartment provided time to process the evening's developments. Jessica's reaction had been more gracious and professional than I had anticipated, demonstrating maturity that balanced her initial surprise with genuine respect for what I had accomplished. The family dynamic that had often positioned us as competing siblings was evolving into something more collaborative and mutually supportive. More significantly, the revelation had established a foundation for our professional relationship that acknowledged both our individual strengths and our complementary capabilities. Instead of the awkwardness I had feared, the evening had created clarity about how we could work together effectively while maintaining appropriate boundaries between family and business relationships. Monday morning arrived with the crisp energy that accompanies new beginnings. I arrived at Pinnacle Solutions 30 minutes early, using the extra time to familiarize myself with the building's layout and observe the morning routines of my new colleagues. The reception area bustled with purposeful activity as teams prepared for client meetings and project coordination sessions. Patricia Williams met me at the elevator, her professional warmth immediately putting me at ease. Amanda, welcome to your first day as Director of Strategic Partnerships. I'm excited to get you started. My office was located on the 4th floor with windows facing downtown Phoenix and the distant mountains beyond. The space was larger than I had expected, with room for both individual work and small team meetings. A whiteboard covered one wall, ready for the strategic planning sessions that would become central to my role. Your first week will focus on orientation and initial planning, Patricia explained as we reviewed my schedule. I've arranged meetings with key department heads so you can understand how strategic partnerships will integrate with existing operations. Marcus Chen appeared in my doorway, carrying coffee and wearing the satisfied expression of someone whose recommendation had been validated. How does it feel to be back in a corporate environment? Different, I admitted. But different in positive ways. The energy here is much more entrepreneurial than what I experienced at Sterling Financial. That's intentional, Patricia interjected. We've worked hard to maintain startup agility even as we've grown. Your strategic partnerships division will be crucial to preserving that flexibility while scaling our capabilities. The morning progressed through a series of introductory meetings with department heads, each offering insights into current client relationships and potential collaboration opportunities. The conversations revealed both the sophistication of Pinnacle's existing services and the clear gaps that strategic partnerships could address. By lunchtime, I had begun to understand the scope of what I would be building. The Strategic Partnerships Division wouldn't just coordinate with external consultants, but would architect comprehensive solutions that integrated multiple specialties around specific client needs. It was exactly the kind of systematic approach to consulting that I had been developing independently, but with resources and support that could scale it significantly. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica during my lunch break. "How's your first day going? I'm meeting with my Henderson team this afternoon to discuss our first collaborative project with Pinnacle," I replied. "Going well, looking forward to working together on the collaboration." Her response came quickly. "Me too. This is going to be good for both of us." The afternoon brought meetings with current clients who had expressed interest in expanded services, providing immediate opportunities to apply the strategic partnership approach. One manufacturing company needed both operational optimization and customer retention strategies. A professional services firm required technology integration alongside client relationship management improvements. Each client conversation revealed the potential for comprehensive solutions that addressed multiple business challenges simultaneously. Instead of referring clients to separate consultants for different needs, Pinnacle could now coordinate integrated approaches that produced synergistic results. As my first day concluded, Patricia stopped by my office to check on initial impressions and answer any outstanding questions. "How are you feeling about the scope of what we discussed?" "Energized," I replied honestly. "The client needs you've described align perfectly with what I've been developing independently. The main difference is the scale of opportunity here." "That's exactly what I was hoping to hear." Patricia settled into one of the chairs facing my desk. "I should mention that we've already received our first request for a strategic partnership project. Henderson and Associates reached out this afternoon about collaborating on a comprehensive marketing and client retention strategy for one of their major accounts." "That would be Jessica's project," I observed. Patricia's eyebrows raised slightly. "You know Jessica Torres?" "She's my sister." The information clearly surprised Patricia, though she recovered quickly with the adaptability that had made her successful in managing rapid organizational growth. "Your sister? That's an interesting coincidence." "We discussed it over the weekend. We're both excited about the professional collaboration despite the family connection." Patricia nodded thoughtfully. "How do you want to handle the family dynamic professionally?" "I want to make sure we structure the relationship appropriately." "I think we should treat it like any other partnership," I replied. "Professional standards, clear boundaries, and focus on results rather than personal relationships." I agree completely. Jessica impressed me as highly capable during our initial meeting. If she brings that same professionalism to the collaboration, the family connection shouldn't create any complications. As Patricia prepared to leave, she made one final observation that captured the significance of what was beginning. "Amanda, I have a feeling that this strategic partnerships division is going to exceed even our optimistic projections. The combination of your expertise, our client base, and partners like Henderson creates possibilities that none of us could achieve independently. The first day had established both the framework for my role and the foundation for what promised to be an exciting period of professional growth. The transition from independent consulting to director-level responsibility felt natural rather than overwhelming, suggesting that the skills I had developed privately were indeed scalable to larger organizational contexts. That evening, as I reviewed notes from the day's meetings and planned strategies for the upcoming client projects, I reflected on how dramatically my professional circumstances had changed in just 1 week. The job loss that Jessica had sympathized with had catalyzed opportunities that exceeded anything my corporate position had offered. More importantly, the revelation at Sunday's family dinner had established a new dynamic with Jessica based on mutual professional respect, rather than assumptions about relative career success. The sister who had offered to help me find employment was now coordinating her team's most significant partnership opportunity with the company where I was directing strategic initiatives. Sometimes the most transformative changes emerge from apparent setbacks, revealing possibilities that become visible only when familiar constraints are removed. The layoff from Sterling Financial had initially seemed like career disruption, but it was proving to be career acceleration in directions I hadn't previously imagined possible. 3 months into my role as Director of Strategic Partnerships, at Pinnacle Solutions, the transformation felt complete yet continuously evolving. The morning sun streaming through my office windows illuminated whiteboards covered with project timelines, partnership maps, and revenue projections that exceeded our most optimistic initial forecasts. What had begun as an opportunity to scale my independent consulting work had evolved into something far more substantial, a comprehensive approach to business solutions that was reshaping how both Pinnacle and our partner organizations served their clients. The collaboration with Henderson and Associates had become our flagship partnership, demonstrating the kind of integrated service delivery that other companies were now requesting specifically. Jessica and I had developed a working rhythm that balanced our family relationship with professional excellence, creating results that impressed clients and set new standards for partnership effectiveness within both organizations. Our first major project together involved a regional medical practice network that was struggling with patient retention, despite excellent clinical outcomes. The traditional approach would have addressed either the marketing challenges or the operational inefficiencies separately, but our integrated strategy tackled both simultaneously, while adding a patient experience optimization component that neither organization could have provided independently. The results spoke for themselves. Patient retention rates increased by 51% within the first quarter. Referral rates improved by 38%, and overall revenue grew by 27%, while operational costs actually decreased through efficiency improvements. More importantly, patient satisfaction scores reached levels that positioned the practice network as a regional leader in healthcare quality metrics. Jessica's role in coordinating the marketing and communication elements had been exceptional, demonstrating strategic thinking that went well beyond traditional account management. Her ability to translate complex operational improvements into compelling patient-focused messaging had been crucial to the project's success. Watching her present quarterly results to the client's board of directors, I felt genuine pride in her professional growth and our collaborative achievements. The success of that initial project had generated demand that required us to expand our partnership network rapidly. Within 2 months, we had established relationships with specialists in technology integration, financial optimization, human resources development, and regulatory compliance. Each partnership was structured to provide comprehensive solutions while maintaining the quality standards that had become our distinguishing characteristic. Patricia Williams had been promoted to Chief Operating Officer, partly based on the success of the Strategic Partnerships Division, and had become an invaluable mentor as I navigated the complexities of scaling professional services. Her guidance helped me understand not just the tactical aspects of partnership management, but the strategic vision required to build something sustainable and continuously valuable. "Amanda, I need to share something with you," Patricia said during one of our weekly planning meetings. "The board has been discussing Pinnacle's long-term growth strategy, and your strategic partnerships model has become central to our future direction." She paused to pull up a presentation on her laptop. "We're considering expanding into 3 additional markets over the next 18 months, and the partnerships approach you've developed would be the foundation for how we establish presence in each new location." The expansion plan was ambitious, involving offices in Denver, San Diego, and Austin, each requiring the development of local partnership networks while maintaining the integrated service standards we had established in Phoenix. It represented both tremendous opportunity and significant responsibility. "What would that mean for the Strategic Partnerships division structurally?" I asked. "You would become Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, with regional directors reporting to you in each market. Essentially, you'd be building and leading a company-wide capability rather than managing a single division." The promotion represented career advancement beyond anything I had imagined when I first accepted the director position. More significantly, it would provide the platform to create something that could influence how professional services partnerships operated across multiple markets and industries. "The board is prepared to offer you equity participation at the vice president level," Patricia continued. "Based on our growth projections, that could be quite substantial over the next 5 years." As I considered the opportunity, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Can you meet for coffee after work? I have something I want to discuss with you." That evening, we met at the same cafe in Tempe where Linda Foster and I had strategized about my career transition months earlier. Jessica arrived with the focused energy that indicated she had been thinking carefully about whatever she wanted to discuss. "Amanda, I want to talk about something that's been developing at Henderson & Associates," she said after we'd ordered our drinks. "The success of our Pinnacle partnership has gotten attention from our corporate leadership, and they're offering me a promotion that would involve expanding partnership relationships with other companies." She paused, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "Essentially, I'd be doing for Henderson what you're doing for Pinnacle, building strategic partnerships that create comprehensive client solutions." The parallel development was both logical and satisfying. Jessica's expertise in partnership coordination had become as valuable to Henderson as mine had become to Pinnacle, creating opportunities for both of us that built on our collaborative success. "That sounds like a natural progression," I observed. "How do you feel about the possibility?" "Excited and slightly nervous," she admitted. "It would mean working with multiple partner organizations rather than focusing primarily on our Pinnacle collaboration. The scope would be much broader, but also more complex." Jessica's openness about her nervousness reflected the growth in our relationship over the past several months. The sister who had once offered to help me find employment through her connections now sought my perspective on career decisions, recognizing expertise that she hadn't previously acknowledged. "What specific aspects make you nervous?" I asked. "Managing multiple partnership relationships simultaneously, ensuring quality control across different types of collaborations, and scaling success without losing the personal attention that has made our work with Pinnacle so effective." Her concerns were sophisticated and demonstrated strategic thinking about implementation challenges rather than just excitement about advancement opportunities. This was Jessica operating at her professional best, balancing ambition with realistic assessment of complexity. "Those are legitimate concerns," I agreed. "How would Henderson structure the support for this expanded role?" We spent the next hour discussing the practical and strategic aspects of her potential promotion, exploring approaches to partnership management that could address her concerns while capitalizing on her proven strengths. The conversation felt different from our family interactions, more collegial and mutually consultative. "There's something else I want to tell you," Jessica said as our conversation began to wind down. "Working with you professionally has been one of the most valuable experiences of my career, not just because of the project results, but because of what I've learned about strategic thinking and partnership development. The acknowledgement was generous and unexpected, reflecting a level of professional respect that had developed gradually through our collaborative work. "I've learned a tremendous amount from you as well," I replied. "Your client relationship management skills and strategic communication abilities have made our projects much more successful than they would have been otherwise." Jessica smiled, the kind of authentic expression that had become more common between us as our professional relationship had evolved. "It's strange how things work out, isn't it? When you lost your job at Sterling, I felt sorry for you and wanted to help. Now we're both advancing in ways that build on what we've accomplished together." "Sometimes apparent setbacks create opportunities that wouldn't have been visible otherwise," I observed. "And sometimes the people we think we understand best are actually developing capabilities we never recognized," Jessica added, clearly referring to her own assumptions about my professional potential. The next morning brought news that would frame both of our career decisions. Marcus Chen appeared in my office with information that Patricia had asked him to share confidentially. "Amanda, there's been a development that affects your expansion opportunity," he said, closing my office door behind him. "Pinnacle has received a preliminary acquisition inquiry from a national consulting firm. Nothing definite, but significant, enough that the board is evaluating options." The information was both exciting and potentially concerning. An acquisition could provide substantial financial benefits for employees with equity participation, but it could also change the organizational culture and strategic direction that had made Pinnacle an appealing place to build a career. "What kind of timeline are they considering?" I asked. "Preliminary discussions only at this point, but the board wants to position the company for maximum value, regardless of whether they ultimately decide to pursue acquisition or continued independent growth." Marcus paused, clearly considering how much additional information to share. Patricia specifically mentioned that the Strategic Partnerships division has become a significant value driver for any potential acquirer. "The integrated service model and partnership network you've built represent capabilities that are difficult to replicate." The conversation highlighted how the work I'd been building at Pinnacle had created value beyond what I'd initially anticipated. The consulting practice that had started as independent work with 8 clients had evolved into an organizational capability that attracted acquisition interest from national firms. That afternoon, I called a meeting with Jessica to share the development and discuss how it might affect both of our career trajectories. We met in Pinnacle's main conference room, treating the conversation as a professional consultation rather than a family discussion. "If Pinnacle is acquired, what happens to our partnership relationship?" Jessica asked after I'd outlined the situation. "That would depend on the acquiring company's integration approach," I replied. "Some acquirers maintain existing partnerships while others prefer to consolidate services internally." Jessica nodded thoughtfully. "Which means my promotion at Henderson becomes even more important strategically. If I'm managing multiple partnerships, losing Pinnacle wouldn't be as significant to my role or to Henderson's revenue." Her analysis was astute, demonstrating the kind of strategic thinking that had made our collaboration so effective. She was considering not just immediate opportunities, but potential scenarios that could affect long-term career stability. "There's another possibility," I said after considering various alternatives. "If Pinnacle is acquired and the new ownership changes the partnership approach significantly, I might consider transitioning back to independent consulting, but at a much larger scale than before." The idea had been developing in my mind since Marcus shared the acquisition information. My experience building the Strategic Partnerships division had provided insights about scaling professional services that could be valuable across multiple industries and markets. "You mean starting your own firm?" Jessica asked. "Potentially. The partnership network I've developed, the client relationships we've built, And the integrated service model we've proven could form the foundation for something independent but substantial. Jessica's expression shifted to something resembling excitement, mixed with calculation. And if I take the promotion at Henderson, I'd have the partnership management experience and industry connections that could be valuable for that kind of venture. The possibility hadn't occurred to me consciously, but Jessica's observation opened up strategic options that neither of us could pursue independently. Our collaborative success at Pinnacle and Henderson had created complementary expertise that could potentially support something larger than either company currently offered. That's an interesting thought, I acknowledged, though premature until we understand what actually develops with both of our current opportunities. Over the following weeks, both situations clarified in ways that would shape our professional futures. Pinnacle's board decided to pursue acquisition discussions seriously, recognizing that the strategic partnerships model had created value that justified premium pricing from potential acquirers. Henderson and Associates officially offered Jessica the partnership development role with responsibility for expanding collaborative relationships across their entire client base. The convergence of these developments created decision points that required us to think strategically about long-term career objectives rather than just immediate advancement opportunities. Jessica accepted Henderson's promotion, recognizing that the broader partnership management experience would be valuable regardless of what happened with Pinnacle's acquisition. I decided to accept Pinnacle's vice president promotion while the acquisition discussions continued, understanding that the expanded role would provide experience and equity participation that could support various future scenarios. If the acquisition proceeded favorably, I would benefit significantly from equity appreciation. If it didn't, I would have built regional partnership networks that could form the foundation for independent consulting at unprecedented scale. 6 months later, the acquisition completed successfully, with Pinnacle's strategic partnerships model becoming the template for similar divisions across the acquiring company's national network. My equity participation provided financial foundation for whatever career direction I chose to pursue, while Jessica's expanded role at Henderson had established her as one of the most effective partnership development professionals in the Phoenix market. The regional medical practice project that had launched our collaboration continued to exceed performance benchmarks, becoming a case study that both organizations used to demonstrate partnership effectiveness to prospective clients. More importantly, it had established a working relationship between Jessica and me that balanced family connection with professional excellence in ways that benefited both our careers. Looking back on the transformation that began with losing my job at Sterling Financial, the most significant change wasn't professional or financial, but personal. The experience had reconnected me with capabilities I had set aside during years of corporate employment, capabilities that proved more valuable and scalable than I had ever imagined. Jessica's evolution throughout this period had been equally remarkable. The sister who had offered to help me find employment through her connections had become a strategic partner whose insights and expertise contributed to achievements neither of us could have accomplished independently. Her growth from account management to partnership development reflected not just career advancement, but the kind of strategic thinking that creates lasting professional value. The family dynamic that had once positioned us as competing siblings had evolved into mutual respect and collaborative capability. We had learned to work together professionally while maintaining appropriate boundaries, creating results that impressed colleagues and clients while strengthening rather than complicating our personal relationship. Sometimes the most significant professional transformations begin with apparent setbacks that force us to examine capabilities we've been underutilizing and opportunities we haven't been recognizing. The job loss that Jessica had sympathized with had catalyzed developments that exceeded both our career expectations and our understanding of what we could accomplish together. The sister who had laughed when I lost my job had become my most valued professional collaborator, demonstrating how changing circumstances can reveal potential that remains hidden until conditions align to bring it into focus. What started as career disruption had evolved into career acceleration in directions neither of us had previously imagined possible. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.